Hi everyone. So I'm Tina. I head up the research and digital analytics at Ticketmaster, where maybe 5 years ago I introduced this State of Play series, which is essentially an in-depth study on a specific genre that we care about in our business. So we've done one for theater, for comedy, for festivals, EDM, electronic dance music, and last year we did one for Grime. And what we do with this study is really look at the 360-degree experience of this genre. So we go deep, we try to understand the audience, we try to understand who they are, where they're from, why they go to these events, and we use as much information and as much data as we can from all the different sources to really triangulate the stories and tell it as it is. So we did a survey with 2,000 plus adults between 16 and 65 years old. We did some qualitative focus groups. So some focus groups as well. We had some transactional data looking at 757 events since 2009 of Grime artists and Ticketmaster and Ticketweb database. And where possible, again, we tried to get external sources like Spotify streaming data, BPI Music's data, just again to tell that story and bring it together and bring it to life. We also made a video. And this is just a short trailer to give you a sense of what Grime is for those of you who don't know. And then we'll go into the data. R-E-A-L. So hopefully now you have a bit more of a feel for what Grime is and what it looks like and what it sounds like. And these were some of the industry experts that we also worked with to, again, give us more of an understanding and contextualize some of the data that we got. So with that context to begin with, and a little bit of history on Grime. So it started in the kind of early noughties in East London, from council estates, very much a DIY kind of attitude, quite similar to punk. In some ways, a lot of people compared it to punk. And it was a disenfranchised youth kind of coming together and talking about their experiences. And so the content was quite politicized to begin with. And we go to today. This was the research was conducted late last year, and we're looking at the penetration of Grime is quite high already amongst a nationally representative sample of the UK population. Close to 3 in 4 actually were aware of what Grime is and what it is as a genre. And you've got over 1 in 5 who consider themselves fans, and 13% who've attended a Grime event in the past year alone. So already we're seeing in 2017 people know and like Grime. And they listen to it across different sources. So radio and YouTube are the two singular services and platforms from where they actually consume Grime. But if you look at all the other ones highlighted, so they're all streaming services, if you combine them, it's actually the biggest source is a streaming service. 50% of listeners actually listen to Grime through a streaming service. And the majority of them, I think it was 77%, have a paid subscription. So again, it's easily accessible. It's really easy to get through technology and on the go as well. And people are listening to everywhere, including radio also. Because of this kind of ubiquitous nature and it's everywhere and it's really accessible, a lot of people are saying it's becoming more mainstream. So we asked if they think that's happening, and the 39% said it is becoming more mainstream. But what was interesting here was that the majority of them thought that that is a good thing and not a bad thing. And when we cut the data to look at if this changes, whether or not you're a big Grime fan or you started listening to Grime from back in the day, what we found is that the more the fan, the bigger the fan, the more they feel comfortable with the fact that it is becoming more mainstream. And here again, we look at 26% saying that it's more than just a music, it's a way of life. And when we cut the data again by fans and by really heavy listeners, that came up to 59% who think it's a way of life. And when it came to the focus groups and the qual research that we did, that was even more pronounced. So talking about it being a way of life, talking about it becoming mainstream, but it being a good thing because, again, these artists are getting recognition finally and they're becoming rewarded and they're really spreading the word of grime to a wider audience and really touching different parts of life as well and not just music. So that's what we call the democratization of grime. I have to get it right because it's always a difficult word to say. Again, kind of touching on the stuff that we've already been through and a little bit more later in terms of the audience and the growth. It's not just music. It cuts across different parts of life. So let's start with the audience and what grime audiences and attendees look like. We were quite surprised in a way to see this. It's quite a cluttered slide, so bear with me. At the top, you see the male-female breakdown. Slightly more male than female, but not as much as I expected. Average age is a bit older again than I expected, so 29. The majority of grime attendees are between 25 and 34, but you do have 2% of grime attendees who are over 55 years old. So, there is an audience there. Though propensity to attend is higher amongst 20 to 24-year-olds. A bit more London-centric, as you kind of would imagine to begin with in terms of attendance, but that might be because there's more events happening in London. And the interesting thing here is social media use. So grime attendees have a much higher propensity to use social media across the board, so all the different services that we tracked here. And Instagram specifically, I think it was double the likelihood to use Instagram and regularly if you're a grime attendee versus the nationally representative sample that we were looking at. So highly engaged audience, very much into social media, very tech savvy, but quite diverse as an audience. And in terms of the genres that they listen to, so these are people that said that they like grime, but actually only 40% of them said that it is their favorite genre. So we have an overlap, as you'd expect, with other urban genres like hip-hop, rap, and R&B, but also quite a high overlap with pop, and more so than with grime on its own, which I think, again, speaks for the fact that grime artists are now starting to really start collaborating with pop artists as well. So you've got Stormzy doing collaborations with Ed Sheeran and with Little Mix. You've got Gigs doing collaborations with Lily Allen. So it literally is reaching this wider audience. And again, in terms of demographics, you've got really young children quite familiar with these artists as well and some of this music, which is quite interesting. And when you think of other stuff that grime attendees like to do, it's not just music that they like going to, but they do like going to they go to more events than our nationally representative sample, with a higher over-index within comedy. So that came out in the research and in the transactional data. So they're a lot more likely to go to comedy events than our base sample, which again is interesting. And it's a good cross-selling opportunity also, if you think about it. And there's lots of different reasons to attend. So we try to understand why they go to these events, to grime events specifically. And it ranged from, the connection with the artist and just listening to music, having a really fun night out, also being forced by their friends to go. But we thought this was a nice stat. 34%, 1 in 3 actually go to meet potential partners. And of the sample here that goes to meet potential partners, we also saw there's a higher propensity to use Tinder, as you'd expect. But yeah, these are the kind of things that we can really pull out from the data and really kind of give richer picture of who these audiences are, and then we can start thinking about how we can attract them better. So growth. This came from Posty. This is a really nice quote. We want as many people to enjoy grime and rap as possible. I think it creates revenue for the artist. This is one of our most proud exports musically as a country. So back to that mainstreamization bit that I mentioned. People within the grime industry want it to grow. They don't consider it alienating, the fact that it's reaching a wider audience, a more diverse audience. They want it to become international. They want it to grow across borders and cross boundaries and cross pop audience also, if necessary. So looking at Spotify, grime streams have more than doubled in the past year alone. And that's through a combination of playlists that Spotify actually curates, and also, again, grime artists that are becoming quite big themselves. And looking at BPI data, again, we saw that sales for physical and digital albums grew faster than for the total market, like significantly faster. So digital and physical streaming and music consumption is growing. And so is, and it's also growing across the UK. So it's not just London-centric. We saw attendance tends to be a little bit more skewed within London. But in terms of listening to grime, it happens across the UK and across London as well, and internationally. So I mentioned in the panel yesterday that Australia, US, Germany, Netherlands are actually big listeners of grime. So it's not just a UK phenomenon, it's really starting to expand its reach beyond the UK. And attendance over the years is growing as well. So we looked at the type of people who go, it's quite diverse, but also there's more people going. It's just going up, both for grime gigs and for festivals. And then looking at our transactional data again, since 2010, we're selling more tickets to more customers for more events across our different platforms. So again, just going up. The trend is insane. So with this growing audience, it's diverse, it's growing. They're kind of highly engaged. So you would expect that brands want to kind of capitalize on that and really start creating partnerships and relationships with grime artists and events. So we looked at whether or not grime fans are comfortable with that idea, and the majority are overwhelmingly particularly comfortable with clothing brands and alcohol brands. But what is interesting here is even the finance brands, who are at the bottom of this list in terms of brand fit, when we compared to the same kind of research that we do for other audiences, it's a lot higher. So grime audiences are a lot more comfortable with brands entering their market and working very closely with their artists and their events in general, across the board, across all of these categories. And again, what we found, cutting the data by grime fans, like bigger fans, the more the fan, the more comfortable they are with this type of relationship. And in the qual and in the focus groups and in the interviews that we conducted, it went back to that idea of being rewarded, and they're happy for their artists to get more money out of it as long as they can maintain their independence and their sense of creative freedom, which they seem to be doing quite well. So some notable examples of these kind of partnerships: Adidas and Stormzy, they've been kind of working together for a while, and it's quite a good fit. It works quite well. I think it's quite iconic as well. A lot of people do associate Stormzy with Adidas. And then we've got Skepta and Uniqlo, Puma and AJ Tracy. So we've got a lot of the clothing brands that we saw people expect to actually work with grime artists. And then you've got brands like KFC, for example, who've worked with Chip and Kano and Wretch32 to create this music video to support their Pack More Into Lunch campaign and get more people eating more over lunch or more interesting snacks. And finally, Mercedes and Kano. I mean, if that isn't mainstream and luxury, what is? I mean, getting Mercedes to work with a grime artist is probably the epitome of really looking at these kind of partnerships and seeing them work together quite nicely. And Kano is considered very well respected as a grime artist. He's not considered to be sold out. So it's working, and it's working quite well. But then it goes beyond just brands and sponsorship. It actually touches lots of different parts of life, like I said, including politics. So considering the content and the nature of grime and where it came from, that is expected in a way. But it's happening, and it's happening a lot. And we saw here that 20% of those aware of grime had heard of this hashtag. It was hashtag Grime for Corbyn during the 2017 election. So don't know, for those of you who are not from the UK, Jeremy Corbyn is the leader of the Labour Party and the opposition, and the grime community came together to create this hashtag to get more grime fans supporting Jeremy Corbyn during the elections. So high awareness rates of this campaign and this hashtag around the elections. Quite a strong overlap between grime fans and their kind of political affiliation. So 58% of grime fans voted for Labour during the elections. But I think the most interesting stat here is that close to a quarter of grime fans who did vote for Labour said that the campaign had influenced their vote. So you actually have direct impact of a campaign that did start from the grime community into politics. So That's really interesting. And then it translates in these kind of relationships. So here you've got Sadiq Khan, who's the mayor of London, saying grime is here to stay, awarding Skepta at the Enemy Awards for Best Male. And then this is Jeremy Corbyn and Stormzy. Again, he, I think, presented him with the award for Best Male at the GQ Awards. So these relationships are really being cemented, and celebrated, actually, between art and music and grime and politics. And the final thing also to note, which is semi-related with politics, but more actually with the community feel of grime, is around this Form 696, which you probably can't read it, and also it's too long to read, but it was a controversial form that is the key word here, that was scrapped in November of last year as a result of the community coming together and really voicing the fact that it is pretty controversial. It was quite restricting and limiting, disproportionately affecting grime artists and events. And we did look at it in our report as well, trying to see if grime fans were aware of the form to begin with, if they thought that it was a good idea, if they thought it should be scrapped. So we were part of that conversation. We can't take credit for the fact that it was scrapped. But I think it does show how, it really mobilized that community, and it was a force for change. And it just really brings together all these different parts of society and how it can have an impact through this one music genre. And I want to kind of leave you with this quote from Michael Riley, who is from the Westminster University, who helped us with the report. And basically, he just talks about how grime does epitomize this idea and the sense of entrepreneurship and creativity and community. And again, just really highlights everything that we've gone through so far in terms of our data, showing that it's only likely to grow more and to go on and do bigger and better things. So for more information, you can download our full report and check out the video on our blog. And I'll be around for more questions later.